Torrhen Square is not worth the mud beneath my heels. It's Winterfell that matters. Stannis Baratheon to Asha Greyjoy. A Dance with Dragons, Chapter 42. The King's Prize. House Tallhart of Torrhen Square is a noble house from the north, and is among the principal houses sworn to House Stark of Winterfell, firstly when they were kings in the north, and later as wardens of the north under the Iron Throne, post Aegon's conquest. They are one of the few northern houses not to be counted as lords, with the head of House Tallhart using the title Master of Torrhen Square. The use of the term Master is the equivalent of a house being landed knights in the south. Ser Helman Tallhart is the Master of Torrhen Square at the start of the main books. Their seat of Torrhen Square is located south of the Wolfswood, southwest of Winterfell, and slightly north of Baratheon, on the northern shore of a large lake. A river from this lake leads south into the Saltspear. Torrhen Square has stone walls said to be 30 feet high, with square towers at each corner. Its square keep is considered strong. While we know little of the history of Torrhen Square, its name suggests it could have at some stage had a connection to House Stark, given Torrhen is a common name used among the house. However, the name Torrhen is not exclusively used by House Stark, but this idea does give us a likely theory. The arms of House Tallhart show 3 green sentinel trees over a field of brown, their words being proud and free. Sadly, we know very little about House Tallhart's history prior to the start of Game of Thrones, but we do know that like most houses of the north, they claim their descent from the First Men, and thus are likely a very old house dating back thousands of years. We also know that in 58 AC, Queen Alysanne Targaryen, the sister and beloved wife of King Jaehaerys the Conciliator, stopped at Torrhen Square for a short while as she travelled between Baratheon and Winterfell as part of one of her solo royal progresses of the north that included a visit to the Wall and the Men and the Night's Watch. It has also been implied by Theon Greyjoy that Eddard Stark, as the Lord of Winterfell, would often visit Torrhen Square for weeks or 2 at a time. This makes sense, given that House Tallhart are one of the bannermen most closely located to Winterfell itself. Having these close relations thus makes sense. The current Master of Torrhen Square prior to the War of the Five Kings is Helman Tallhart. He is seen as a very loyal and reliable man by Lady Catelyn Stark, amongst the most trustworthy of her husband's bannermen. Ser Helman has at least 2 children, one son, Benfred, and a daughter, Eddara. Benfred is tall, noisy, and abrupt. He's described as big, bluff, and a loud boy with a thick neck. He often frequently visits Winterfell with his father, and is friendly with Robb Stark and Theon Greyjoy during these visits. When visiting Torrhen Square with Lord Eddard, Theon used to mock Benfred for his thick neck, to see how angry he could make him. We do not know much about his sister Eddara. However, it seems like she could have been named after her father's liege lord, Eddard Stark, again speaking to the close and friendly relationship between the Tallharts and the Starks. Lord Walder will grant your crossing. His swords are yours as well. Less 400 he means to keep back to hold the twins. I suggest you leave 400 of your own, a mix of archers and swordsmen. He can scarcely object to an offer to augment his garrison, but make certain you give the command to a man you can trust. Lord Walder may need help keeping faith. As you say, Mother, perhaps Ser Helman Tallhart, do you think? A fine choice. Catelyn Stark and Robb Stark on Helman Tallhart, A Game of Thrones, Chapter 59, Catelyn 9. After getting indications the Lannisters were involved in the murder attempt on Bran Stark, Lord Eddard Stark tells his wife Lady Catelyn when she visits King's Landing to send word to Ser Helman and Galbert Glover to raise 100 bowmen each and fortify Moat Cailin just above the neck. During the early stages of what would become the War of the Five Kings, Robb Stark, acting as Lord of Winterfell, calls the Banners of the North in response to Lord Eddard's arrest in King's Landing for supposed treason against the new king, Joffrey Baratheon, on the death of King Robert. Tallhart men march to Winterfell, and given the proximity are among the first to arrive. Ser Helman's younger brother Leobold remains at Torrhen Square as Castellan, alongside Helman's daughter Eddara. Ser Helman is the first northern bannerman to greet Catelyn Stark when she eventually joins Robb's war council at Moat Cailin before they continue their march south past the Neck and into the Riverlands. When the Northmen arrive at the Twins, the river crossing controlled by House Frey, Helman is very sceptical of their chances of taking the castle by force if the need arise, on account of their strong defensive position and twin keeps. After an alliance is formed between House Stark and Frey, sealed with a pair of marriage pacts, Robb names Ser Helman as the commander of the garrison of 400 archers and swordsmen left behind at the Twins to ensure the loyalty of Lord Walder. Leobold Tallhart, whose wife is the sister of the late Lord Hallis Hornwood, brings up his son Beren as a possible heir to the Hornwood inheritance. However, given the current war, this matter is not seen as a priority. Inspired by Robb Stark's success during the War of the Five Kings, Benfred Tallhart gathers a company of lancers around himself. When his uncle, Leobold, dismissively refers to them as the Young Rabbits, Benfred and his companions adopt the name Wild Hares, tying rabbit skins to the tips of their lances. When Sir Leobold later informs Sir Rodrik Cassel, the Castellan of Winterfell, of Benfred's Wild Hares, the aged knight instructs Leobold, the Castellan of Torrhen Square, to order Benfred to remain at the Tallhart seat. As Castellan of Torrhen Square, Benfred's uncle Leobold dispatches Benfred and his Wild Hares to confront ironborn who have been raiding and plundering along the stony shore. Believing the enemy force to be small, Benfred and his company fail to send scouts ahead. As a result, Theon Greyjoy and his large force of Ironmen are able to ambush and decisively defeat the Wild Hares. All of Benfred's companions are slain in the fighting, leaving him as the sole survivor. Though Theon hopes to question Benfred as the leader of the Wild Hares, the wounded knight refuses to answer his questions, instead denouncing Theon as a traitor and spitting in his face. In response, Theon Greyjoy has Benfred drowned. Sir Edmure Tully orders Helman to depart the Twins to aid Lord Roose Bolton in the capture of Harrenhal. Roose later receives word from Helman that Darry has been taken after the Lannister garrison surrendered. Roose responds by order of King Robb. The prisoners are put to death and the castle burned. Helman is instructed to join Robert Glover and take part in the attack on Duskendale. After helping defeat the Ironborn at Torrhen Square, Leobold joins Sir Rodrik Cassel in the effort to retake Winterfell from Theon Greyjoy's forces. During this battle, Leobold is killed by the Dreadfort garrison, and his body is later presented to Theon as a grim gift from Ramsay Snow. Helman, along with a large portion of the northern infantry under his command, is slain in the Battle of Duskendale after Lord Randyll Tarly successfully anticipates and counters their attack. The northern forces are caught off guard by the Tarly preparations, and the engagement ends in a heavy loss for Helman's host. With Helman's death at Duskendale, leadership of the house and rule of Torrhen Square passes to his only surviving child, his daughter Eddara. But Eddara's rule of Torrhen Square starts troubled, as the seat is captured by the ironborn raider Dagmer Cleftjaw. It seems that most of the Tallhart men who marched south with Robb Stark died in the south, many at Duskendale along with Ser Helman, and the rest lost during the betrayal of House Frey and Bolton at the Red Wedding that saw the North taken out of the War of the Five Kings. Although the Ironborn occupy Moat Cailin and Deepwood Motte and are eventually defeated, Torrhen Square remains firmly under the control of Dagmer Cleftjaw. In the aftermath, the remaining Tallhart men later join Roose Bolton, who's newly named Warden of the North, first at Barrington and later at Winterfell. Despite their presence, Roose remains uncertain of their loyalty and doubts whether he can depend on them in the long term, given their historically close ties to House Stark. Those surviving men of House Tallhart who escaped the fighting at Winterfell later managed to rally to King Stannis Baratheon's following his victory at Deepwood Motte, throwing their support behind King Stannis' cause.